All of us were hit with a little bit of a political sucker punch. The bad news is that Kamala Harris does not have the same baggage as Joe Biden because whatever we might say, Kamala Harris is a lot younger, and Kamala Harris is obviously not struggling in the same ways that Joe Biden did.
Candid comments there, and they may just be an accurate assessment of how much Biden dropping out of the race has shaken things up, truly. But compare what you heard from Senator Vance there to what former President Donald Trump said publicly just a few moments ago on Fox.
I think she's a worse candidate than him. She's far more radical left. She is younger. I mean, she's 60 years old. A lot of people, I didn't realize she was 60. I thought she was a little younger.
Joining me now is the reporter who broke this story, Isaac Arnsdorf, who is a national political reporter for the Washington Post. And it's great to have you, Isaac. I mean, this is the first time we're actually getting to listen to what Senator Vance said during that fundraiser. You obtained this audio. You reported on it earlier, but now tonight we're hearing it for the first time. And it's just notable given Trump was on Fox tonight just a few moments ago saying that he actually thinks she's a worse candidate. What do you make of what you heard in this audio from a private fundraiser compared to what we're hearing from the Trump campaign publicly about her viability?
Well, that's exactly right, Caitlin. I mean, it's not exactly an earth-shattering insight that Harris, in just a short week since taking over the Democratic ticket, has raised a ton of money, energized a lot of Democrats, brought out a lot of new volunteers, and has been able to make speeches and draw crowds and land attacks in ways that Biden was struggling to do. I mean, we can all see that for ourselves. The thing is that the Trump campaign had been publicly, including Vance himself, had been publicly taking this line of, you know, nothing to see here, nothing has changed, and that's different than the message she had for these donors behind closed doors.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you're right. It makes sense because essentially they're saying, you know, they want to act like everything's fine and that it hasn't changed much. Obviously, it has changed. We all know that, and people do concede that. But the question is, you know, what does this attack look like on Harris? How are they going to go after her since they do have a new opponent? And he also talked about that on this audio that you obtained. I want everyone to listen to that.
We wonder, how is the world caught on fire? How is there a new war in seemingly every continent in the world? And it's because Kamala and the Democrats lied about Joe Biden. It kind of leads into the good news because no person in the United States of America owns the disastrous Harris-Biden agenda more than his own vice president of the United States.
What's interesting is, you know, part of this audio is they did seem to have concerns about shaping perception of her because everyone has a fully formed opinion on President Biden, on former President Trump. He thinks from that audio, it sounds like that it's not that case with the vice president here.
Right. There's another part in the remarks where he basically says, you know, love him or hate him. Basically, everyone already knew Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and most people had their minds made up. And Harris is just a lot less well-known, a lot less well-defined. And so it's a race between both campaigns to try to shape Americans' impressions of her, almost like a reintroduction. And the Democrats are out with their story of how they're trying to position her as a prosecutor and as an optimistic voice for the future. And you're seeing the Trump campaign kind of try a lot of different things right now. And in the Senator Vance was talking about that in the clip we just heard, you know, some of the ways they're trying to pin some of Biden's record on her, make her responsible for that, accuse her of covering up for Biden's health. And then you also heard in the clip from former President Trump talking about some attacks that are specific to Harris, you know, making her out to be a San Francisco liberal. So it's kind of a grab bag at this point still. They are seeing what kind of message they can drive that's going to connect.
Yeah, they're still coalescing around that line of attack. And I do want to note that the Trump-Vance campaign put out a statement tonight on this audio, and they said poll after poll shows President Trump leading Kamala Harris as voters become aware of her weak, failed, and dangerously liberal agenda. Her far-left ideas are even more radioactive than Joe Biden, particularly in the key swing states that will decide this election, like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
Well, I don't always agree with the commentary from CNN. I wanted to play that clip in full because I think the reporting from the Washington Post that was in it was really great. And it shows in that leaked audio from JD Vance just how scared the Trump campaign is. And although Caitlin Collins read a statement from the Trump campaign at the end of that clip saying that they are fine, they're totally okay because they're up in every major swing state in the polls, that's just flat out not true. And you don't have to go to a liberal pollster to see that Kamala Harris is leading. Even a more conservative pollster like Fox News shows Kamala Harris with huge margins in every single one of the most important swing states. And we're going to check out that polling right now. Yes, this Fox News poll has Kamala Harris up big in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the most important swing states in this election. And a historic number of up 10 points in Michigan shows just how ahead Kamala Harris is. Now, of course, those states are going to be some of the swing states that decide this election. And so clearly the Trump campaign is scrambling right now, knowing that they have no real attack to land on Kamala Harris. You saw Caitlin Collins start to list off some of the ways that they're trying to frame Kamala Harris right now. The Trump campaign is trying to say that an unsecure border is her fault, when in fact it was Donald Trump who blew up the bipartisan border deal. They're trying to claim that she's maybe soft on crime, which doesn't make sense because Donald Trump himself is a convicted felon and Kamala Harris was a career prosecutor. But it's funny to see JD Vance's comments absolutely humiliate Donald Trump at the worst possible time, where it's incredibly clear that he's trailing in this race, that he's losing this race, and really just humiliates Donald Trump when ever since JD Vance became Donald Trump's running mate, he's done nothing but hurt him. And some polling that we are going to check out, some reporting from CNN, shows just how bad of a running mate JD Vance has been, historically bad. Let's check it out.
He does worse in his home region at minus 16 points than he does in the average of all polls, which is a minus 5-point net favorability rating. So the people who know him best, the region that knows him best, they like him even less than America likes him. And of course, as you pointed out, again in that kind intro, is he is historically unpopular for a VP nominee coming out of his first convention as the VP nominee.
All right, so let's specifically look at some former Republican presidential candidates. What do you see?
Yeah, you mentioned Sarah Palin. How about Dan Quayle as well? These are two folks who I think most people remember as not being particularly popular. The amazing thing was, coming out of their conventions, they actually were pretty popular. Quayle with a plus 15-point net favorability rating. Sarah Palin with a plus 26-point net favorability rating. Again, Vance at minus 5 points is just off the charts and falling off the chart in the wrong direction. Not up above the chart, but down below the chart. The fact is, he is historically unpopular, even more so than VP nominees, who of course went on to infamy, at least in terms.
Well, I mean, right. So you look at what happened to those two, and they plunged. Some may say, well, maybe there's nowhere to go but up for Vance, but in margins, that's not true. It can get worse.
It can get definitely
just don't know
worse.
which way it will go. All right. So when this comes to the broader country, you talked about how the area that knows him best right now in the favorability likes him least, but undecided voters. That's what this is about. There are more of them than a lot of people care to admit.
Yeah.
And prior to the seismic shift in the race, many of them may have gone for Trump.
Could have.
Now, who knows what they're going to do? How does Vance play there?
He doesn't play well with them at all. His favorable rating is just 5%. Just 5% hold a favorable rating. 29% hold an unfavorable rating. That makes a net favorability rating of minus 24 points. That's worse than his net favorability ratings overall. The fact is, if undecided voters are going to make up their mind based upon JD Vance, they're going to make it and make the choice for Kamala Harris.
5% favorable?
5% favorable.
Ever heard of anything like that?
I really haven't. There's still a lot of folks who are undetermined on him, but that 5% is not something I think is going to go on his wall of fame.
All right, Harry.
Just devastating stuff there for JD Vance. The people who know him best in his own hometown, his own home state, dislike him even more than the rest of the country. That should really tell you everything you need to know right there, that the people who know JD Vance best know that he should not be the vice president of the United States. It's just like how JD Vance knows Donald Trump shouldn't be the president, and he's already said that. We know JD Vance's comments from 2016. They were true then. Just because he takes them back now, that doesn't mean that they're any less true. But like I said, JD Vance has really just been causing problems for Donald Trump ever since he became his running mate, just doing a terrible job overall, as resurfaced clips of him in 2020 and 21 and 2022 of especially him saying that most Democratic elected officials are childless cat ladies? Yes, that clip has been going viral right now, and JD Vance deservedly is getting absolutely dunked on for it, because what a ridiculous thing to say. Republicans want to pretend that they care about freedom and family values, but they don't want people to have the freedom to make their own family choices, and they think that anyone who has a family that is not in their mind conventional is wrong. And so it really just shows the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, and someone who's always calling out the hypocrisy of the Republican Party is Pete Buttigieg, and he had this to say about JD Vance.
Answer in the debate from both candidates was, I think, kind of confounding to everyone. But I'm glad you brought up children, because there's actually this answer that JD Vance gave a few years ago, and he name dropped you in it about people who don't have children working in the government. This is what he said.
It's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
Now, I should note you have 2 children. They were born before Pete gave that answer. Harris is also a stepmom to children as well. But what's your response to that?
The really sad thing is he said that after Chasten and I had been through a fairly heartbreaking setback in our adoption journey. He couldn't have known that, but maybe that's why you shouldn't be talking about other people's children. And it's not about his kids or my kids or the vice president's family. It's about your family, people's families whose well-being will depend on whether we go into a future led by somebody like Kamala Harris, who is focused on expanding the prosperity, the freedom, the well-being of our families. And by the way, especially if you have kids and you're worried about climate, choosing between a party that has a plan on climate that creates jobs and a party that still calls it a hoax, even as we went through the hottest day in world history. Or do you want your children to grow up in a country defined by a return to the chaos and recrimination and cruelty that was the hallmark of the Trump era?
Pete Buttigieg, incredible as always, doesn't just respond to that really, frankly, disgraceful clip from JD Vance. What he said about women and women in the Democratic Party is just so sad and reveals his low character. But I love how Pete doesn't just take this as an opportunity to kind of clap back at JD Vance, but Pete Buttigieg, being the incredible communicator that he is, takes this as an opportunity to say, no, I don't just want to talk about JD Vance. I want to talk about the future and how he is the past and how he's looking in the past and how Donald Trump is the old that we don't want to go back to. We do not want to go back to the chaos of Donald Trump's 2016 administration. We don't want that. We don't want to go back in time. We want to look forward to a younger candidate like Kamala Harris. We can talk about the age of these 2 candidates. We can also talk about the age of their ideas. And both times, Kamala Harris is going to win out. And so I'm so glad that Pete moves away just from JD Vance's gross comments into talking about what really matters, that this race is going to be about the future of investing in infrastructure, investing in lowering prescription drug costs, investing in childcare, investing in battling climate change. That's really what's at stake here, whether we want to have a positive or negative vision for the future. And I know that there's a positive vision coming from Kamala Harris. And I know that JD Vance and Donald Trump, frankly, their vision is in the past, looking back to a time in which women were stripped of their reproductive freedoms, pushing back our civil liberties as far as they possibly can with Project 2025. And so I am so incredibly glad that Pete Buttigieg is calling them out. And I love that this video and this audio was leaked from JD Vance, because it just shows how scared they are. And they should be, because Kamala Harris's message resonates. And it's going to win out in November. And if you think that it resonates, if that message resonates with you as well, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. We are so close to passing 100,000 subscribers. And I think we can get there by the end of the month with just a little bit of help. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Leave a like on this video. It really goes a long way in supporting what we are building here. And I am so excited to continue this journey with y'all. And until next time, I'll see you soon.